naman sa ating tapatan sa aristocrat. At marami tayong pag-uusapan sa araw na ito. Dalangin ko po na kayo ligtas sama kayo naroon at walang anumang pagabag sa araw na ito. Nais ko pong maliwanagan tungkol sa facts and figures ng COVID-19 sapagkat sinasabi po na umaabot na sa halos 130,000 ang active cases in the Philippines at higit na sa 2,000 ang nasawi. Mahalaga mapag-usapan kung ano ang sitwasyon ngayon. Inanyayahan po natin si Dr. Ted Elbosa, isa po sa mga advisor ng Interagency Task Force on Emerging Infectious Diseases. Siya po ay dating Health Undersecretary at siya po ay kasalukuyang Executive Vice President ng University of the Philippines. Makakasama rin po natin si Attorney Sikini Labastilla. Siya po ay OIC ng City Anti-Drug Abuse Council ng Caloocan. Subalit nadagdagan ang kanyang trabaho sapagkat siya yung pinuno ngayon ng COVID-19 Command Center sa Caloocan. At makakasama rin po natin mamaya ng kaunti si Professor Ramon Clarete, dati pong dekano ng School of Economics ng Pamantasan ng Pilipinas upang magbigay ng kanyang insights tungkol sa sinasabing impact ng 16.5% drop in GDP sa second quarter. Okay. Anong impact nito? Makakabawi pa ba tayo? Sapagkat nabanggit po naman ni Secretary Dominguez na 9% ang nawala sa gross domestic product sa unang 6 na buwan noong taong 2020. Ano ba ang sitwasyon? Pero samantala, hinihintay natin yung iba pa nating mga panauhin. Tanungin na natin si Attorney Labastilla ng Caloocan. Attorney, anong ginagawa ninyo sa Caloocan para maganap yung contact tracing? Please.
Okay. Pwede ba mag-share ng screen? Hindi. Pwede. Pakita ko na lang yung... Okay. Naka-disable. Para pakita ko yung flowchart. Kasi nung nagsimula ako, kalat-kalat yung information eh.
Sige.
Try to streamline if I may.
Please.
But naka-disable po yung screen sharing ko.
Okay.
Bawal ba?
Subukan natin.
Ngayon okay, subukan natin. Okay. Thanks. Yun. Okay. So, yan. Okay. So, we did a workflow para we try to capture lahat ng data. Kasi ang nangyari dito sa first column, yung test results, kalat-kalat eh. So we have 3 major kinds of results. One is coming from, sinasabi naman inside, galing sa partner testing centers namin. Mostly from Red Cross. No? Red Cross composes more than 50% of our test results. And the second box coming from test centers na wala kaming MOA. And then the third box comes from the test results, yung mga generated from the barangays and from the private companies in and around Caloocan City. So we try to capture everything in one inbox, which we designated a command center. We set up a physical center in the 3rd floor of the City Hall. And then we also set up email system saka mga hotlines. No? So I'll talk about hotlines later. And then these are processed, especially yung sa second box, kasi itong other testing centers. Dati, pag magkakausap yung mga epidemiologists, kasi we also have an epi, no? So, and it gets to her email, it gets to her cell phone, it gets called. So now we set up a command center. We have right now 28 contact tracers, and we have 4 encoders. And then they immediately, from her inbox, it gets transferred into a contact tracing form. So we call up the index case, and then we try to get as many names from the index case as possible. Yung mga galing naman sa partner testing centers, especially Red Cross, the results are reflected in another email, which we call the surveillance email. And these are now transmitted to the health centers. We have 48 health centers spread all over Caloocan City, and each health center, we have at least 2 contact tracers. The nurse, who was trained well before, as early as January and February by our EPI. And recently, the dentists were an addition. So if we say we have 48, that's an additional 96 contact tracers for each health center. And they also do the same thing that we do in the command center, which is get the names of the close contacts, which is reflected on the 4th column. So we get the names of the close contacts, and then we find those close contacts through either the BERT or through the health centers themselves. So how we do that is, of course, very sensitive. We were trained, luckily, as you know, PML, yung team ko, they're mostly psychologists, young psychometricians, who are in the drugs. We were in the drug war before, right? So trained na sila mag-interview, and right now we converted our platform into online. So we basically do a lot of online counseling. So that became a basic skill. And through motivational interviewing, we call MI, and it just took a little tweaking para ma-convert into contact tracing yung skills na nila, no? Talking to people over the phone and, kumusta. So luckily there are courses now in Coursera and other, and which rapidly increased our capability on how to really do this. Then once we get the names, we tell now the 5th column, which is the BERT. Okay, sila yung pinaka-crucial po dito, the Barangay Health Emergency Response Team. Sabi ng DILG in their memorandum, each barangay of 5,000 people should have at least 1 BERT team. 1 BERT team is composed of a health worker, and at least 2 volunteers, and 1 from the NGO, so at least 4 members of each team, para makatutok na dito sa COVID. So what do the BERT team do? So they locate these close contacts, and then they inform these close contacts that they've been identified as possible COVID positive. So they don't do the actual interviews themselves, but they just inform those already identified to stay put kasi matetest sila, right? And so they'll monitor them. If they become symptomatic, then they notify now the command center. Then after the testing, if the case or the close contact, if the close contact has been tested, then he or she goes home and wait for the symptoms to develop, if any. If the symptoms don't develop, then they can stay home, provided that they can self-isolate. So this is a big proviso, because not all people have the ability to self-isolate. So if you have a family of 4 and in cramped conditions where they all share 1 room, so it's almost impossible for them to self-isolate. At the same time, we recognize that the increasing number of cases will put a major pressure or a demand on our capability to provide them with community quarantine facilities. So this is where the battle is right now, nasa BERT. And the data again goes to the CESU, which is the epidemiologist, CTEP and surveillance unit. And she analyzes the data and prepares the daily updates. So daily updates are uploaded to WHO website, COVID Kaya, and COVID Kaya also shares it with, I think, UP, yung ncov.ph, right? Hi, Doc. So just tama. So, and then once the commander uploads the documents, so again it goes to the line list, and then for new batch of testing, and then for we have a daily update now with the city mayor. We're closely coordinating which barangays should be monitored, etc. And this is where the NCO PH is really helpful because of the maps that they provided. And you know, this is so how we did this. We had to go through these 6 batches of trainings. Hindi naman po madali na mag-Zoom for births. So we observed the maximum training capacity of our city, and we trained both the dentists, and we also trained close to 300 birth members, no, in six batches. Tapos yung police din po, sumama din po sa amin. They also volunteered to be contact tracers. I told them they're a completely different class because for one, they cannot be categorized as health workers. So
Okay.
they are there in the background. They are there in the background to sort of provide weight to our effort. And if things don't go well with our conversation, with some index cases do exhibit resistance, to being interviewed. So we ask them, if it's possible, we can have someone visit your house so we can get more face-to-face time with you, and that will be the police.
Okay.
So the police also copied their playbook from, I think, Mayor Benji Magalong was widely recognized as the model for contact tracing efforts. Yes.
Uh-huh.
And he very generously shared with us his techniques and strategies through a Zoom conference. Lahat kami ng department heads, pati yung command center with him. So yun po. That's mostly how we do it, and it's still a work in progress. We do recognize that. That's why I'm very excited to be here because of Dr. Ted and of course the others, because we have so much to learn from the others on how this should probably be done.
Yeah, let me ask you, gaano kalaki ang bawat pamilyang napapasyalan ng inyong contact tracers? Ano yung average size sa isang household?
Oh, well, when you say napapasyalan, it's really phone calls. No, we don't go to the house themselves. No,
Okay.
No, that's too risky right now. But in the average number of households right now, when we started, it was still the ratio was like 1:2. That was for every index case, we were able to identify 2 close contacts, and then basically community contacts. But right now we've increased the ability to 4.5. So the average height of a family in Caloocan will be something like that number, 4.5.
4.5. Okay. So, yung average size ng bahay sa Caloocan, gaano kalaki?
Oh, so when you say, so the South Caloocan would be more cramped, sa Dagat-Dagatan, Bagong Barrio, all those areas. So we don't have an exact number, but I would say just slightly bigger than a studio type. Most of them are really transient, renters. We have the semi-high rises in Bagong Barrio and even Dagat-Dagatan. In the north, different story. Mas malalaki yung mga bahay doon. They're more able to self-isolate.
Okay. We'd like to welcome our good friend, Dr. Ted Herbosa. Dr. Ted, welcome to the program. Welcome aboard. Can you tell us your views about the reports? Yung pinakahuling report ay halos 130,000 na ang mga COVID positive cases in the Philippines. How do you look at it? Doc?
Good morning, Melo, at good morning sa mga nakikinig sa atin at nanonood dito sa Tapatan.
Yes, please. Welcome.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Okay.
Okay, so our cases continue to have transmission. Meron tayong continued transmission dito sa ating Metro Manila, Calabar Zone, Region 3, at saka sa Cebu. So ito yung mga top areas that we are concentrating in. Ang lahat na yan, ang pinaka-due problem niyan is population density. Nakita na natin na where there is very high density of population, there is continued transmission. And we saw dyan sa Caloocan, ganun yung transmission. By the way, yung National Task Force have been visiting the LGUs, no? Iniisa-isa namin lahat ng cities of Metro Manila and the nearby provinces. Lahat ng probinsya na nakapaligid diyan sa Cavite, Laguna, Rizal, around Metro Manila. Kasi diyan din po yung matataas ang cases of COVID-19 transmission. And we are seeing different sources of cases. Like for example, sa Laguna, nakita namin yung malaking source ng cases nila ay doon sa mga tinatawag nating industrial zones, the workplaces. Kasi nga doon sa workplace nagkakahawahan. We found 2 places na nagkakahawahan sila. Dito sa shuttle, di ba? Nagpo-provide yung mga company ng shuttle. So doon sa shuttle, nag-share pala sila ng mga snacks. E siyempre, ibababa yung mask. Tapos nagkukwentuhan sila doon. The second one is the cafeteria. Doon din nagkakaroon ng transmission. And then parang hindi nagkaroon ng initial coordination with the LGUs. So ngayon, pinag-uusap na namin yung mga industry owners, factories, to talk with the mayors. Kasi pag nag-positive, napupunta ang burden doon sa mayor, doon sa place of residence. Eh, wala yung mga factory mo nandiyan sa Santa Rosa, sa Binyan, sa these areas, pero nakatira sila sa Calamba, sa Carmona. So nag-iiba-iba yung burden na pupunta kay mayor to provide tinatawag nating temporary treatment and monitoring facility. So yan ang situation natin. Continued yung transmission. The MECQ is helping. The MECQ has decreased the movement of people, and because of that, I'm sure the effect of this will be felt 1 to 2 weeks later.
1 to 2 weeks later. Hindi ba pwedeng ituloy na?
Hindi immediate kasi ang effect ng yung sinasabi nag-MECQ tayo starting August 4 hanggang August 18, 14 days. Ang incubation period kasi ay anong tawag dito, 14 days, mga 4 or 5 days may infect ka. So, to prevent transmission, may lag na mga 1 week to 2 weeks lag. So, itong mga cases na nakikita natin, yung 3,000 a day, 4,000 a day na cases sa Pilipinas, ito ay na-infect sila a week ago or 2 weeks ago even. So, ngayon pa lang sila naglalabasan. Tapos another week to confirm it. Kasi itetest mo pa bago maging confirm na positive. Pagkatapos another few days, 4 or 5 days bago makuha yung result. So a total of 2 weeks itong mga nakikita nating positive na nire-report ng DOH every day. 2 weeks ago sila na-infect nung naka-GCQ pa tayo.
Okay. Pero what about this requirement na yung mga empleyado magkaroon ng rapid testing? Is rapid testing really working?
Okay. May mga doktor na against sa rapid testing as a screening methodology. And I agree with them, no? Kasi nga, ang design nitong rapid test, ang i-check nito yung antibody. Yung antibody sa katawan natin, lalabas lang yan 12 to 21 days. Mga 11 to 12 days, lalabas yung IgM. So, infective ka pa nun, nakakahawa ka pa nun kasi may IgM ka, may acute antibody ka, may virus ka. So lahat na magpositibo na IgM, kailangan talaga i-PCR. Pero pag ang resulta mo IgG, immunoglobulin G, tapos na yung infection mo. Nakaraan na. Past 21 days na yun bago tumaas. So nakikita mo, ang problema dyan, yung before the 11 days, nagpo-false negative ang rapid test. So ito yung criticism sa paggamit ng rapid antibody test sa workplace as a screening or sa school para sa screening kasi nga magne-negative naman yung tao baka may virus na siya. So at tandaan nyo noon sa mga repatriates, yung mga umuwing OFW at returning to PCR natin sila. 55% sa kanila asymptomatic. 55. So ang ating naka-capture so far sa national 22% lang. So may 30% na paikot-ikot dyan na asymptomatic na nangahawa ng ibang tao. So kaya hindi pwede talaga yung antibody test. Para saan ba na-invento yung antibody test? Yung antibody test, ginagamit yan sa ospital upon the prescription of a doctor. Para may purposes yan for use. Number 1, kung gusto mo mag-donate ng convalescent plasma, i-check muna nila kung may antibody ka nga o hindi. Kung wala, hindi ka pwede mag-donate. Kung meron, itetest ka pa isa pa, yung tinatawag na ELISA test sa makina yun. So, para malaman yung quantity ng antibody mo at kung qualified ka maging donor. Ang main value ng antibody test ay isang public health zero prevalence surveillance, tinatawag namin. Kunyari may isa kang city na nagkaroon ng epidemya at gusto mong malaman kung ilan doon sa mga population na yon ang nagkaroon na ng COVID, gagamitin niyang antibody test to test randomly segments of the population. Parang yung survey, phone call survey ng mga political science, di ba? So malalaman mo ngayon kung gaano kalawak ang mga na-infect na sa isang lugar. Pero hindi siya ginagamit sa individual na pang-screen. Kaya nga nadidinig mo si Congresswoman Bondok, di ba? Naggawa ng video. Sabi niya, she is against the use of the antibody at pinapaban pa nga niya. Kasi nga mukhang ginamit ng mga ibang tao sa maling indication, hindi sa tamang paraan na paggamit ng antibody test. So hindi kasi nila naintindihan kung ano yung tinetest. So ngayon, as of now, ang nire-recommenda pa rin ay PCR testing kung malaman kung may virus ka o wala.
Okay. Pero may access ba ang karamihan ng tao sa pagsusuri na ito? We have about 98 testing centers nationwide.
100 na.
100
na yung na-approve and there are 18 more yata na malapit ng ma-approve din. Access, I guess in Metro Manila, I can say may access na ang tao basta mai-refer sila. Ang problema, pag madaming kaso, siyempre nagkakaroon ng longer turnaround time kasi tumatagal. Number 2, hindi lahat ng medtech natin tumatagal, nai-infect din sila. Kasi yung ma-handle ng sample, pwede rin ma-infect sila. So may mga medtech tayong nai-infect, may mga lab na nagsasara. Yung RITM, 2 beses na nagsara at nag-disinfect yan. Kasi nahawa sila. So, yung iba naman, yung lab, nag-set up sila ng lab, hindi naman automated. Hindi siya computerized. So, mano-mano. So, yung test, matatapos mo in 18 hours, yung PCR test. Pero pag nag-encode ka ng 500, 1,000, baka 3 araw pa, hindi ka pa tapos mag-encode kung iisa lang yung encoder mo. So yun yung beauty ng mga bumili ng full automation. Kasi yung iba manual, akala nila madali lang. So pag manual naman, yun ang pinakamahirap na part kasi dapat hindi ka magkamali. Naalala mo yung congressman na sinabihan sila na positive, hindi naman pala positive, nagkamali pala, clerical error lang. So yan ang mga issue dyan. Mabagal yung encoding, mabagal yung pagdala. Dapat nung nag-set up ng lab, automated na rin para mabilis.
Okay, good. May tanong yung ating kasama sa audience, si Marlene Manaay Robles. Para kay Attorney Labastilla ng Caloocan, gaano ka-effective yung barangay centers as contact tracing sources? Pakisuyong, pakisagot yung tanong ng ating kaibigan si Marlene.
Ulit po, gaano ka-effective yung
barangay centers as contact tracing sources?
So, health centers, na-mention kanina, they're the...
Barangay hall siguro to. O pwedeng barangay health center.
Health centers are under the City Health Department.
Okay.
So, each, so these are the DOH approved and run. Sila po yung trained, no? From even before COVID. They were trained by our CTEP, si Dr. Lee. And they're very effective with their work. Kung effectivity lang yung pinag-uusapan. Yung nga lang po, as mentioned by Dr. Ted, it's really the test results that are right now that's causing all the delay. We cannot get the test results often enough. In fact, somebody crunched the DOH numbers for us, for Caloocan, and probably know this guy. He does this as a pastime. But from symptom onset to test, kinumpute niya, no? Then test to result, then result to confirmation, then symptom onset to confirmation. Based on on the DOH data na nilalabas ng DOH every day, he computed that symptom onset to test is 13 days on March. Ngayon, it's 17 days. And then test to result, right now it's 11 days. And then the result to confirmation is another 7 days. So that's 35 days, no, from symptom onset to confirmation. So kahit ando na yung mga yung structure no sa barangay, the delays that are caused by the processes make contact tracing itself very, very difficult to do. Kasi by the time na nakuha mo yung index case, yung name na index case, almost a month has passed, more than a month has passed per this computation. No? By the time, so tapos na, either grumabit na siya sa 14 days incubation or quarantine period, and or by the time nakausap po siya, nakalimutan na niya, no? Basically kung sino nakausap niya. No? So we have a lot of late cases that's being reported. So we're trying to address that. Right later this afternoon, we would meet with all of them, all the contact tracers, and we basically agreed that we'll start doing Google Sheets. So real-time encoding, but of course the security features have to be there. They can only encode the forms, the data that they have. Then the forms will be transmitted to the CESU, and the CESU will have it in real time. So at least yung period ng from result to confirmation, we will be able to cut down from 7 days to less than 30 minutes. We'll see how that will go. Kasi yung encoding is a big part of the delay.
Really? Okay. So, Dr. Ted, isang tanong pa rin, doon sa mga nag-positive, paano nila nalaman yun? Saan nila na-attribute yung positive sila? Because of contact tracing ba? O because of symptoms? At yung accessibility nila sa testing centers?
Marami silang nagpa-positive, hindi nila alam kung kansino sila nahawa. So this is a sign of continued community transmission. Pag yung hindi mo na malaman, this is a difficult situation for our contact tracers. Kasi nga, ang gagawin ng contact tracer, 7 days prior to positive, tsaka nila hahanapin. Pero kung delayed nga yung resulta, abot ng mga 2 weeks, 3 weeks, yun nga, sabi nga ni Bok, talagang hindi na nila maalala. Ako, nag-positive ako . So, I had to list down all the people that I had to, hindi ko nagawa yung 37 . Ang nasulat ko lang, mga 25. So, mahirap talaga yung 37 na sinasabi ni Mayor Magalong. Pero, isipin mo na ako, no? I remember the people I meet and I got into contact with. I have to write their names and their contact numbers. At natawagan naman sila lahat. At luckily, dahil ako yung tinatawag na asymptomatic, wala naman ako nahawa kahit isa doon sa 25 na nilista ko doon sa akin. Pati pamilya ko, pati asawa ko hindi nahawa. So, importante talaga yan, yung numbers, yung how to, kailangan kasi sa contact tracing is speed and agility, speed and accuracy. Dapat mabilis. So, pag na-swab pa lang sila, probable pa lang sila, dapat kino-contact trace na sila. In fact, ito ang proseso sa Nabotas. Sa Nabotas, pag pinadala ka sa swab center, nag-fill up ka na rin ng case investigation file. Ito yung case investigation file, ito yung file ng contact tracer na tinatawag na nagsasurvey kung sino mga kinontak mo. So ginagawa na nila yun para and then habang naghihintay ng result, kino-contact trace na yung mga tao. Yung first level, second level, and third level contacts. So ang first level, yung lahat ng naging kahalubilo ko. Ang second level, yung nakahalubilo nung nakahalubilo ko. At yung third level, yung nakahalubilo nung nakahalubilo ko. Ngayon, karamihan sa ating LGU, ang nako-contact trace lang yung first level at ang average 1:4, 1:6. May iba tumaas na after the training of Mayor Magalong. At sa Caloocan parang nasa 20 na parang 1:20 na or something. Basta tumaas na yung iba, pero malayo pa rin dun sa target na 30 to 37 contacts per person. So nahuhuli tayo. Ano ibig sabihin nun? We are behind the curve. So hindi natin nahahabol lahat. Number 2, yung sinabi ko kanina, ang daming asymptomatic na nag-aaligid. Siguro 30% of the asymptomatics na 50% ng mga asymptomatics hindi natin nakukuha. So ibig sabihin nun, continuous silang naghahawa. So very important talaga yung stay home, yung pagsuot ng mask, at yung pag-alcohol ng kamay and social distancing ng 2 meters. Very important po yun. Okay.
Paano yung ilang mga kababayan natin na kahit may COVID-19, alcohol ang iniinom?
Naku, yung pa isa. Noong umikot kami sa mga LGU, siyempre pag pumunta ka sa looban, like yung sa Cebu, pinuntahan namin yung Cebu kasi nga putok yung cases, no? Ang dami, hotspot. Nakita namin na sa barangay, doon nagsusugal, nagiinuman, nasa labas yung mga nanay, nagchichismisan, walang mga suot na mask, or kung may mask man, nasa baba, wala sa ilong at bunganga. So nagkakahawahan sila. So yung nakikita natin sa main road, huli ng pulis yun eh. Di ba? Naglalakad ka sa main road, may pulis, may checkpoint. Pero yung dapat gawin ng ating mga local officials, and this is where the barangay captains become very important. Ito yung laban natin ngayon is community level, barangay level. Ang magandang example na nakita ko, and this is the first barangay I saw, yung barangay Addition Hills. Binisita namin ng Sabado dito sa Mandaluyong. Di ba congested yun? Napasok ka na ba doon, Melo? Napasok ka na siguro doon. Naglagay sila ng loudspeaker sa bawat barangay hall. So pag nagsalita yung barangay captain sa mikropono, dinig sa lahat ng bahay at dinig sa lahat ng tapos paulit-ulit parang nakakato nila, yung sabi nga nila, indoctrination mode nila. Magsuot ng mask, mag-alcohol, maghugas ng kamay, mag-social distancing. So paulit-ulit yung mga tapos hinihiya talaga nila. Ale, yung mo, hindi mo sasuot ng tama. So ito yung approach na very unique pero very effective. So, congested place, alam mo yung loudspeaker talaga na malaki. Tsaka talaga. Tapos paggabi, pag curfew na, pagdating yata ng alas 8, may curfew na doon, magpapatugtog na ng music, yung nakakatakot. Kaya yung mga bata, umabalik sa loob ng bahay. Kasi may music sila na intended for people to go home and sleep already. So yan ang mga measures na ginawa doon.
Let me ask you, siguro para na rin kay Atty. De La Bastilla, pero Ted, sa'yo muna. Merong mga government offices, pinapadala yung mga empleyado sa MOA for swab. Okay? Ang hindi ko malaman, ano yung procedure dahil sa pumila yung mga empleyado, posibleng mahawa rin sila ron. Anong consideration doon? Dahil tinawagan ko yung isang cabinet secretary, ang sabi ng cabinet secretary, maghintay lang ng results for 3 days. Kung nahawa yun o meron siya, hindi niya alam, pag uwi niya ng bahay, paano?
Yung setup, Melo, sa mga mega swabbing center kagaya ng MOA, pag pumunta ka dyan, yung mga basketball court sa mga barangay, may mega swabbing center dyan, naka 2-meter distance yung mga upuan, at saka hindi siya, nasusunod yung social distancing protocol. Nakita ko yan, binisita namin yung sa Nabotas, yung sa Bacoor, yung sa iba't iba Caloocan. So yung mga yan, may mega swabbing center yan, basketball court yan, naka-monoblock lang ang setup dyan. May mga lamesa sa harapan, nandoon yung mga naka-PPE at yung mga nagsuswab at may computer lang katapat at yung mga silya, naka 2-meter distance. So doon lang nakaupo. So talagang magkakalayo sila. Yung papunta at pabalik lang ang problema doon. Papunta at pabalik sa bahay. Pwede silang ma-effect. Pero yun ang effect ng magmamaska, yung tinatawag na minimum public health measure. So, minimum naman siguro, Melo, basta masunod yun at hindi magulo yung swabbing center.
Alright. Bakit meron tayong mga kwento na patay na yung tao saka dumarating yung results?
Oo, meron ganyan. Meron nga sa Cebu. Nailibing na tapos congratulations, your father is now recovered. Namatay na, parang nagalit pa yung So this is what we call poor data quality. So nasa data management yan ng LGU o regional office, yung DOH regional office o yung city health office. Very important na walang data errors kasi kawawa yung tao na like yung pamilya na yun na kinongratulate sila na nag-recover na. Nailibing na nila ng 1 linggo. Tapos na silang magburol at ilibing. Tapos biglang sasabihin sila, recovered. Siguro sa datos nila, hindi nila nakuhang namatay. So, inassume nila after 14 days, recovered na. Mali. Dinalong nagalit pa ngayon yung pamilya. So, very important yung very accurate data management. So, ito ang kailangan nating tulong. Nakikita ko nga may discrepancy. Yung datos ng local government, tanungin natin si attorney. I'm sure lagi niya nakikita na yung datos nila sa Caloocan, iba dun sa datos na inilalabas ng central office ng Department of Health. At laging magkaiba yan. Ang isang nakita ko, magkaiba yung cut-off time. Kasi yung cut-off time dun sa DOH parang 3:00 bago mag-press con si Yusek, sino yung Yusek ng DOH? Perhere. Sa DILG naman, ang cut-off time, 5:00 yata. Alas 5. So may 2-hour time difference. Magkakaiba talaga numero nun. Kasi yung resultang lumabas ng 3:00, 4:00, 5:00, makukuha ng DILG, pero yung DOH, kulang. So laging kulang, laging may gap. Yun ang, pero siyempre, mas ako, tingin ko, marami ring, ang sinasabi kasi ng DOH, madaming duplicate. Ang sinasabi naman ng LGU, mas accurate yung kanila kasi per barangay yun. So, hindi natin malaman kung sino nagsasabi ng totoo. So, kami, ang ginagawa na lang namin dahil sa operations, kailangan namin sundin yung sa DILG, yung sa LGU, yung pag sinabit ng LGU, papaniwalaan namin tama yun. We assume it was, as haraan na natin ng DOH mag-validate. Kasi sabi nila, sila lang ang official data. Pero hindi ko naman kailangan ng official data para sabihin, uy, may hotspot sa Caloocan, yung isang barangay, ang daming kaso today. Para umaksyon, di ba? We need to act. Kasi kailangan natin i-lockdown yun, i-contact trace yung mga tao, i-test sila. Pag nag-report sila, pag nag-report si LGU, kailangan umaksyon ng national government. At ganun din yung LGU. Pag may report na ganun, si Mayor, kailangan umaksyon. So, hindi ko na kailangan hintayin yung official data ng DOH. Yung official data ng DOH, pang press conference lang yan.
Okay.
Diba? Yun.
Okay.
Yun.
Okay.
Yeah. Yung pumunta na sila, Dr. Ted.
Please. Yes, please. Sa inyo. Sorry. Paano nyo
yun nga, yung
datos?
Nagpunta sila, Dr. Ted, noong Thursday.
Thursday.
Yeah, Thursday. So just before that night, lumabas yung namin, yung datos ng barangay, yung the most number of cases, yung sa Caloocan, dapat pupuntahan nila. Pati ako natakot kasi 40 yung lumabas the night before, the visit. So, 40 active cases. Ako, di ako pupunta doon. Ako mismo sa Caloocan. Ba't ako susugal doon? Inuubo pa ako, etc. Yun pa, it turned out yung I think 90% of that number were late reports.
Late reports, ayun. Dati pa.
So, if I may again show, if it's okay with you, I have this data crunch again done by my friend Victor, and this is what he came up with. No, this is the data crunch native for NCR. So he's just getting it out there for validation.
28
pati
days.
May sariling testing center na 28 days pa rin. And I think yung result to confirmation, this is just for NCR. The national average right now is 18 right now. He did it himself, this data crunch. I can send this to you, Dr. Ted. And also,
pinicturean ko na.
Okay. Pati yung buong Pilipinas, ginawa na rin niya per province.
Ay, very good. Oo.
Ginawa rin niya ng I'm sorry. So, yun po yung natin, no? Yun po yung biggest, I think, the problem here, because with that much lag time, parang useless yung ginagawa namin dito sa
you are behind. You are always behind the curve.
Yeah.
Lagi kayong huli. Oo.
Wala. Yung hinabol mo, wala na, nakatakas na, nakalat na. Or buti na lang yung very stringent yung social distancing measures natin. mask. We have all the police going around. We've done several lockdowns already. Yung binanggit ni Dr. Ted na loudspeaker per barangay, ginagawa nila namin yun.
Okay.
We even use the birds to closely monitor yung mga close contacts. Kahit hindi pa siya natitest, sabihin namin, o pag nagde-develop ka na ng symptoms, sabihin mo na para ma-prioritize ka, ma-pull out ka, or even transfer to a facility. So proactive na po ngayon. Hindi na kami naghihintay ng test bago kung ma-confirm na infectious ka na, or that. Kasi if you just wait for the system to get to you, by the time na malaman namin yung resulta mo, nagkalat na.
Nagkalat na siya ng 2 or 3 people per person na na-detect mo 1 month later. Siguro 4-5 tao na hinawa nun.
Yes, we're also looking to have our own testing center na. I think we're looking even just temporarily antigen muna. So if pwedeng sumugal na siguro kami doon, Doc, kasi right now, if we're able to identify those who are positive, we may bring out of their homes to quarantine facilities or to make sure that they self-isolate. If we're able to do that within 4 days, from onset of symptoms up to quarantine or isolation, then may pag-asa. We can really cut the transmission down. Rather than the current system right now, where sulat kamay pakaramihan ng mga CTF, tapos meron pang deadline, we want it in real time, i-Google Sheet na lahat, we at least cut down the entire third column, tatanggalin na natin yun. And then, doon na tayo sa test, sa testing center talaga. Kahit mabagal yung process, pero alam mo na gumagalaw. So at least yung 32 days na yun, you'll be able to cut it down to less than a week.
Yes.
May laban ka lang yung COVID.
Correct. If you cut it down to 2 weeks, okay na. Kasi yung incubation period ng virus, ay yung di ba 14-day quarantine tayo eh. Pag nakaka-capture mo siya ng half that time, kasi yung 28 days, double the time eh. Nakapaghawa na talaga siya ng double the number. Baka 3 people na nahawa ng isang taong infected. Ganon. So, ang approach nga natin ngayon na Melo, yung National Action Plan Phase 2, tinuturo natin ngayon yung LGU toolkit, yung pag-lockdown ng bahay, ng sitio, ng purok, yung para kung merong mga cases doon, hindi mo na hihintayin yung test. I-ano mo na sila, i-confine mo na sila para hindi na sila makahawa. Paliwanag nga ni Secretary Duque, di ba, yung Darabi model na ginawa sa Mumbai, yung pinakamalaking slum area sa buong mundo. Ginawa nila yung pag-lockdown na gano'n, area segment by segment, at talagang kino-contact trace nila. So, malaki po ang gagawin ng ating mga local chief executive. Malaki ang trabaho nila para we become ahead of this virus. I'm glad na napakita mo yung problema, nakita mo na we are behind. Pag naghihintay tayo sa national, masyadong bureaucratic, matagal. So, nakahawa na yung individual. So, masyadong too much dependence on reporting, accurate reporting. Ang dapat action. Granular, in a locality, dapat may mapa rin kayo sa Caloocan, per barangay, per house, per number of people in the house. Kasi nga nakita natin, there are 2 places nagkakalat ang isang positive. Sa bahay, 25% of the people nahahawa niya, at sa workplace, yung sa trabaho. So yung dalawa ang ating major sources. Natatakot nga ako kasi nadinig ko this morning, gusto talagang papasukin sa eskwela yung DepEd. So magkakaroon tayo ng pangatlong possible area of transmission, the schools. So kung ako lang ang tatanungin, ayoko munang umpisahan yung eskwela. Wala munang face-to-face. Pwede sila mag-eskwela. Yung online or distance learning. Pero yun munang essential industry at hayaan natin yung barangay makahabol, masugpo lahat itong mga may positive para huminto ang transmission.
Okay.
Lang, Melo.
All right. We have questions from Angel Movido. Angel? Yes, please go ahead.
Hi, sir. Good morning.
Morning. Welcome.
Sir Melo. Sir, kasi di ba recently ang sinasabi is kaya tumataas yung kaso ng COVID-19 ay dahil mas marami nang natitrace, mas marami nang natitest. Pero base sir dun sa analysis ng data analytics team po ng ABS-CBN, it's not the case. So I want you lang sir to comment on that, kung ano ba talaga yung nangyayari. Kasi dun sa data sir, ang sinasabi is tumataas na yung testing pero hindi naman napapababa yung rate of infection.
Okay. First question. Dr. Ted, please.
Sinong gusto mo sumagot? I can answer that. Kasi
Sige.
kasamahan namin sa UP yung mga data analytics nila. Sila Professor David yan ang mga nag-a-analyze for ABS-CBN. Pero may team din ako mga nag-a-analyze, yung kami nila Mahar. And that is true, no? Itong nakikita nating continued transmission ng GCQ. Nung nag-GCQ tayo nitong July, gumalaw ang tao, ay natuwa yung virus kasi nakatalon siya from one person to another. So nag-increase yung ating positivity rate. I think our positivity rate per test is about 10%. What we want is a positivity rate of less than 5%. Tapos yung tinatawag na reproductive number, yung bilis ng pagkalat, I think nasa 1.3 tayo. Gusto natin below 1. Less than 1, 0.5 if ever. Controlled. At above, sabi ng data analytics ng ABS-CBN at data analytics namin doon sa Resilience Institute. Pareho pa, meron pa tayong continued transmission. And yung sinabi ni Attorney Bok, yun. Nahuhuli kasi tayo at the granular community level. We are behind the curve. Kasi nga, 1 month delay bago tayo maka-action sa bawat individual. Dapat ma-actionan talaga early on. In fact, hindi nga dapat tayo dependent sa test. Ay, kunin na natin lahat ng may syndrome. Yung may syndromas, yung may collective symptoms na parang COVID at ihiwalay na talaga sila kaagad. Yun ang dapat approach natin. Too much dependent on test. Confirmatory na lang yun.
Okay.
Ganon.
Bob, from your end.
Yeah, I agree totally with Dr. Ted. I'm taking a crash course sa Coursera, and meron silang, they have a calculator they call Contessa. We inputted our numbers. We came up higher
The virus
because of the
nothing.
Yeah, doing nothing. That's the default.
R. So you want to act and bring that down below 1.
Yes. So yun nga po sa regarding the question nga ni Angel kanina. It's not because we're testing that we're getting more positive. It's just the virus is just proliferating much more rapidly than we hope it should.
Okay.
Sa kapang sagot kay Angel, I think we need the help of the media to really push for individual behavior. Kasi nga, proven naman yung wearing of face mask, face shield. May mga tao kasi dyan, nakita namin sa bawat barangay, lalo na yung mga bata at yung sinasabi ni Attorney Bok na nag-iinuman, ang feeling nila sa sarili nila, invincible. Kasi ang tingin nila, trangkaso lang itong COVID. Mag-uubo ka lang, sore throat, okay ka na. Which is true. Kung bata ka, 21-year-old ka, 30 years old, totoo yan. Pero pag uwi mo, sa nanay mo, sa tatay mo, nakatira sa bahay. Sa nakatira sa isang bahay, nag-report sila sa amin, Diyos ko, mag-isang positive, 1/4 nun, 5 kasong positive na dun sa, doon sa 18 na yon. So, ang bilis ng transmission nito. So, the other thing is the feature of this virus is very different from other viruses. Sa flu, bago ka makahawa, magkakasymptoms ka muna. So, ang nakakahawang tao, yung may simptomas. Dito sa COVID, alam na natin na as early as 2 days from the time you are exposed, wala kang simptomas, you are already infectious. Makakahawa ka na bago lumabas yung symptoms at 5 to 7 days. Kasi 1 linggo bago ka labasan ng simptomas.
Okay. Angel?
So, ang dami mo nang feature nito.
Okay.
I think related, sir, yung last follow-up question ko kasi nabanggit, sir, dahil nabanggit niyo yung Mandaluyong, naalala ko. Nabanggit ng mayor sa Mandaluyong na bagong trend na yung nakikita nila dahil pamilya na raw yung nakahawa. So,
Yes, oo.
iwan daw nila sa bahay, yung mga positive, nilabas daw nila yung negative. You think, sir, pwede na rin i-adopt yun? Kasi ang dami ring LGU na nagsasabi na talagang punuan na talaga yung isolation facility and halos wala na mapaglagyan.
That's an interesting model. No? We also do reverse isolation ng mga ospital. If you notice, may mga cases ka na nakalagay sa pintuan ng hospital room, reverse isolation. So bawal pumasok yung mga tao doon. So ang nangyari diyan sa hindi nila malabas yung, let's say, may edad or disabled, naka-wheelchair. So, ginawa nila, yung ibang kasama sa bahay, para ma-protection na sila. Yes, of course, logically, it's also correct. And it's one way. It's another way. Hindi lang naman siya ang methodology, pero dapat isipin din yan ng ibang mga barangay or mga LGU na pwede yung reverse isolation model. Ang ginawa nga yata nila doon, nagbigay pa sila ng pera. Pagka i-isolate mo isang tao, hindi ko alam kung sa city na yung nadalo ko na, may 3,000 pesos sila. San Juan yata. San Juan. Ang San Juan, pagka positive ka, may 3,000 ka. So kahit tanggalin ka nila, may 3,000 yung pamilya mo na pangkain. So, naglalabasan sila kasi kahit walang symptoms, sinasabi nila, positive kami. Hindi naman sila nag-positive kasi gusto nila makuha yung 3,000.
I think, Kuya Melo, it's really a cultural paradigm shift ang kailangan natin. Yung sinasabi nga namin dito, di ba, pag naging symptomatic ka, you should actually volunteer yourself to be tested. Kasi yun yung but yung problema kasi dito is most people, if they get, the DOH directive now is if you get tested, you have to be isolated for 2 weeks. By that time, wala na, tapos na yung, wala ka ng trabaho, most of the time, di ba? You no work na pay, wala na makain yung pamilya mo. So there's a big disconnect now between volunteering yourself for testing and surviving, or your family surviving for 2 weeks without the breadwinner in the family. So naging conclusion is, wala na mag-volunteer to be tested, di ba?
Correct.
Or no one will even admit to being symptomatic. But this is where the community, the cultures really come in. Inisip ko na nga, kung anak ko, nakitang inuubo-ubo ako, he'll be the first one to tell the city health na my dad is really sick, di ba? He should get him out of the house rather than pahawa kami mag-ina. So, andito po yun, no? Yung the insistence not to tell people that you're developing symptoms because you will either lose your job, you will lose 2 weeks of being with your family. At the same time, the public the demand, the public wellness, the public, paano namin ma-convince yung mga tao to really, come out and say, I need to be isolated from my family. I need to move out because yun nga, sabi dun sa iba, magkakaiba yung motivations na for declaring themselves sick. But this is where the monitoring comes in. If you really have enough people on the ground to verify the claim nila na sick sila, what we did po, Doc, is yung log sheet ng DOH, yung Annex H, we now distributed that to all the close contacts. Sila na mismo maglalag.
Yes.
So, okay, morning and then afternoon, am I feeling well? Am I developing symptoms? Yes. And then i-verify na ng barangay rather than the barangay doing it for them. Kasi just to his brother and sister and to his mother. I mean, especially during this time.
Mm-hmm. So sinasabi mo, ang problema rito, paano lalabas kung nakataya yung kabuhayan? Yun isang problema. So, siguro, Dr. Ted, hindi kaya dito sa COVID-19 lumabas yung malaking agwat, mayaman at hirap? No?
Equity. Well, this is what a pandemic or any epidemic or any crisis for that matter, whether be it an earthquake, volcano, or floods, crisis will always bring out the weaknesses of a society. Pato, lumabas yung weaknesses sa health system natin. Matagal na namin mga doktor, alam kulang ng hospital bed, kulang ng ICU, kulang ng nurse. Anong ginawa nitong COVID? Pinalabas niya na talagang kulang. Hindi tayong ng nurse pero sa sariling bayan natin nagkukulang tayo ng mga nurse.
Yung isang malaking problema ron dahil doon sa feature ng Al Jazeera tungkol sa mga nurses sa Estados Unidos, pinararangalan sila sa kanilang dedication. Pero dito sa Pilipinas, pinagsasabihan pa na paghusayin ng serbisyo.
Naimbitahan nga si Senator na pumunta sa PGH at tingnan naman niya kung ano yung ginagawa ng mga nurse, kung bakit sila hirap na. Kasi mahirap magsuot ng PPE ng 8 to 12 hours nilang suot yon. Ang hirap-hirap po noon. So ang isa pang nakita kong inexplain ni Attorney Bo, inexplain niya na yung ating culture, very difficult to make us follow rules. Yan ang napansin ko. Communist countries like Vietnam, ang galing ng response nila. Kasi pag hindi ka sumunod, ikukulong ka talaga nila. Pag sinabi nilang labas kayo dyan, labas kayo dyan. Pag in-evacuate nila, 80,000 people from Danang. Dito, di mo pwedeng gawin yon, irarally ka. Number 2 naman, yung places like Singapore, highly educated the people, may mataas ang economy, pero autocratic yung gobyerno, nako-control din nila. So, it seems that hindi maganda yung combination natin ng democracy at low literacy. Yung poverty. Yan yung sinasabi mong inequity in society. Lumalabas yan. That is now the one hurting us in our response. Kaya kinikriticize nila tayo na Philippines will be the hotspot in Southeast Asia. Why? Because it's our character. We have too much democracy. We have many people who are probably health illiterate. I will call them health literacy. That is the basic problem. Hindi nila naintindihan itong COVID. Hindi nila naintindihan ang viral transmission. So ayaw nilang sumunod sa pagsuot ng face mask. Ayaw nilang sumunod sa sa pagsuot ng face shield, paghugas ng kamay. And number 3, yung economic situation. Paano mo papag-social distancing yung 18 nakatira sa isang bahay? Sa talipapa, sa isang shanty home. How the hell will you make them? Baka dapat nga ang policy natin, kung ganun ang condition mo, naka-face mask, face shield ka rin sa bahay. Isipin niyo yun. Kasi tayo, we allow, but we consider a middle class home. May kwarto yung mga tao at hindi sila naghahalubin. Pag pumasok ka sa shanty home, nung DOH undersecretary ako 4 na pamilya sa isang 2 meter square area. Nakahiga sa banig yun. Sa umaga, doon sila kakain sa banig. Sa araw, doon sila kung ano man ang gagawin nila. Tapos sa gabi, higa sila, tabi-tabi sila. Nagkakapalitan ng mukha yan dyan sa mga shanty. How the hell can we control that without those situations? Okay. Ang hirap talaga.
I can imagine. We'd like to welcome Dr. Ramon Clarete of the UP School of Economics. Nasa linya na po naman siya. Professor, good morning and welcome aboard.
Good morning.
It's nice to
good morning.
Today. Yeah. Kasama po natin yung mga kapatid natin sa media at sila Dr. Ted Herbosa at si Attorney Labastilla. Let me ask you briefly, anong tingin ninyong impact ng 16.5% drop in the GDP for the second quarter? Ano pong impact nito?
Yun na po yung impact. Malaki yun. That's the lowest we have on a quarterly growth since 1981. Ganun kalala yun. That's 16.
Recession na ho ba yun?
We are.
Recession na ba tawag doon?
So it's a recession.
I have a prepared PowerPoint presentation. I'll share to you.
Yes, please. Go ahead.
Pwede ba?
Opo, go ahead.
Yeah. Mayroon ako. Okay.
All right. Share the screen.
Yun.
Go ahead, sir.
Hindi ito. Iba ito. Iba ito.
Di ba yan?
Iba ito.
Okay. Hintayin natin.
Sandali lang po. Okay, pabalik ako sa Zoom.
Alright.
Global economy, 5% down.
Oo nga.
Bakit ba yun mali ang na-choice ko?
Sige po.
Hindi ko na alam kung ano tanggalin itong isang ano to.
I-close din
Pabalik
po
sa-
yan. I-close.
I-close.
Yan, file na yan.
I-close ko siya. Okay. Ito. Teka. Ayan. Ito dapat anuhin ko.
Sige po.
I-close ko muna yung
Okay.
ano,
Sige po.
yung isa. Wait, yun na nga. Okay. Baka yun na nga. Okay, babalik na ako sa Zoom. Teka muna, saan ang Zoom ito? Kasi ito yung nakikita ko. Okay.
Alright.
Yan, nakikita niyo ba to?
Opo.
Yung dati pa rin.
Okay. Ito na yan.
Yun na yan.
Okay.
Alright. Present.
Go up.
Alright. Nakalagay ko lang dito. Paano ba ito? Ayan. Alright po. Okay. I'll start with IMF forecasts for the world. No? Talagang malaking impact ng COVID. No? Talaga ito, mga negative lahat ito. Minus 4.9 for the economy. Tapos Asia naman, hindi masyado. Minus 0.8 lang. Pero tingnan natin sa Philippines.
Ibang screen parang.
Ito,
Ibang screen ang nakikita
Iba
yata
yung-
namin. Yung PDF file.
diba?
PDF
Iba?
file ang
Yung
nakikita
the
namin.
name is PAAC. Asset PP.
Hindi yan. Dapat i-close ko yan.
I-close niyo muna yung ano, Doc. I-close
Okay.
na yung
Okay.
share screen. Yung share.
Muna ako sa aking Zoom.
Ayan.
Eh,
Yes.
sorry.
Okay. It happens.
Stop share muna ako, ha?
Stop.
Ayan. Ulitin ko ulit.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Teka, nawala.
Teka, sandali po.
Hanapin ko. Ito yung nakita natin. Teka, hindi niyo nakikita yun. Sana ba yun?
Sana po
Nelo
talaga.
yun.
We'll get it. Sandali lang po.
Ito.
Yun. Okay.
Ito. Nakikita niyo, Ramon Clarente?
Po, yung screen nyo,
Hindi.
nakikita natin.
Yung
Join
meron
meeting.
Bakit hindi yun?
Teka, sandali po.
Stop. Na-share ko na yun. Ulitin ko, ha?
Sige po, go ahead.
Okay. Teka muna. Share screen. Okay. Okay. Ito pati. Ganda po. Yan ang isi-share ko, ha? Isi-share ko na yan. Yan ang nakikita.
Hindi po. Maganda po siguro ipadala nyo kay
Teka,
Melo.
subukan natin.
Okay. Bakit? Ano yung nakikita
Kasi
niyo?
island.
I see. So,
Mabato
yun.
na island.
Okay. So anong suggestion mo, Melo?
Go ahead lang po.
Padala sa kanya po.
Ano na lang, I will talk about it.
Yeah.
Sayang
Sayang.
naman yung presentation. Sige. Okay, I can talk and then I send it to...
Yes, please. Okay po. Sige.
Okay. Teka, wala akong ano sa iyo, Melo. Give me your email address.
Teka, sandali po. I-chat ko po sa inyo yung aking email address para siguro.
Hindi, i-text lang kasi
Yeah, okay.
yung kagaya ng sinabi mo,
Okay, sandali.
yung ginawa. Okay. Habang ginagawa natin po yun, okay, nag-start nga ako nung yung global picture, which is the forecast of the IMF. Talagang negative ang growth projection worldwide. And although in Southeast Asia or East Asia, generally we are less impacted by it, negative pa rin ang growth. So, hindi magandang dating. Tapos, ang sunod po noon ay sa Philippines naman. No? Ang kanilang forecast natin sa 2020 growth is minus 4.5. Yung ganun. Masama na rin yun, ha? Kasi if you compare this sa growth natin sa 2019, that's about over 6% positive. So, laki ng impact ng ano na yun, no? Okay, nandito na yun ang email ni Melo. Akuna po to Melo, no?
Opo.
Okay. akuna@gmail.com. Okay. And then attach files from computer. Melo. There you are. Ito yun. Choose.
Sandali lang po.
Send pa. Hindi ko pa send. Isinend ko na. It's going your way now.
Okay. Sandali po. Looking at it.
Hinawa naman, no? Ba't ka hindi na-share ko yun?
Teka, sandali lang po. Sandali lang. Nagkaroon
Okay.
ng glitch.
Okay.
Yan. Okay. Let's try. Wala pa po yung email. Pero go ahead.
Okay. I'll just continue muna. Okay.
Yes, please.
So, in sa Philippines, minus 1.9% ang forecast ng IMF for 2020.
Mm-hmm.
Which is negative, pero given that we had 6.2% growth in 2019, that's really bad. Okay, we were hoping that that growth would stay at least 6% para mag-improve naman tayo. Pero other countries in the South in ASEAN are forecasted to perform worse than us. China will be 1%. Okay. So anyway, let's see ang ating realized growth in the first semester. Okay. Sabihin mo lang, Melo, kung na-share nyo na. Okay. According to the Philippine Statistics Authority, our quarterly growth in real terms in first quarter is minus 0.7%. Okay. That's really bad, okay? In the sense that we were 6.7% in the fourth quarter of last year, 2018 to 2019. Tapos, sumunod pa itong second quarter, which is really worse, minus 16.5%. Okay? First semester, we would be about 8.6% average or just run out of to minus 9%. So, yun ang sinabi ko, quarterly 2 growth is lowest since 1981.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Okay.
Sino po alin po dito sa mga sectors natin ang natamaang in terms of their contributions to GDP, ang manufacturing had a negative growth of 21.3%. Construction, minus 33.5%. Transportation and storage, minus 59.2% sa second quarter. I think we can understand this because we had an ECQ. Okay? And on the positive side naman, our agriculture had a positive growth, which is 1.6%. And I think we can understand agriculture was exempted in the ECQ, agriculture, forestry, and fishing, because that is producing our food. But the other two sectors, industry and services, they had a negative growth. Industry minus 22.9% and minus 15.8% for services. In terms of spending, kasi ang GDP natin would have two sides of it. The spending side and then the industry origin side. So sa spending side, final consumption expenditure declined by 15.5%. Gross capital formation investments minus 53.5%. Ang laki nun, 53.5%. Sa trade naman, both exports and imports also went down. 37% for exports, imports minus 40%. Ang only positive side is the government spending because they have to counter this negative negative growth in other spending items, so they were increasing their spending to the tune of 22.1%. But that's not enough to arrest the decline in the second quarter growth. So, okay, what's our outlook for 2020? Okay. Na-share nyo ba, Nelo? Hindi pa.
Kung hindi po na-share, i-email ko na lang sa lahat ng participants.
Okay, sige, okay. I have maybe I'm now 1/3 of my slides. Okay. For us to get minus 1.5% in 2020, the second semester must have an average positive growth of 1.5%. And that is no longer possible. Okay, because in the second semester, we have minus 9%, which is first semester po yun. So we must have a counter positive growth in the second semester to offset that to get a minus 1.5%. So we are now in the third quarter, and we're starting that second semester with another quarantine. Okay, although slightly stricter than the ECQ, nonetheless, we still have tatamaan din transportation sector, natatamaan din siyempre yung manufacturing, because if the workers cannot go to their workplaces, then there would also be a decline in growth in manufacturing, in services, and so many other things. We, of course, realize that community quarantines are necessary, but they have a pronounced negative impact on the economy. In the next few slides, I'll explain this. But let me see. There are really two curves that we need to flatten. The first curve is the infection curve, okay? Itong first is what the DOH is trying to flatten. And that is because otherwise, if you don't flatten that, that could overwhelm the healthcare system, and the strategy to flatten that, basically, ito na ang pinag-usapan natin yung mga community quarantines. Okay. But the community quarantine would have also a pronounced negative impact on the other curve, which is the recession curve or the growth curve. And that would have a negative growth in the economy. So this is a very difficult balancing to do. If we don't do any work on the flattening infection curve, we will also have a bad effect on the economy. But then if we have also the quarantine, we also have a bad effect on the economy. So it's a dilemma on the part of our leaders.
Mm-hmm. I can imagine.
So let's look at the employment, okay?
Yes, please.
In the three sectors, agriculture, industry, and services, services ang malaking impact. In thousands, 24,614,000 before employed before the lockdown. Okay? And then ngayon, it went down to 19 to 76, employment by broad sector in the services area. Yan ang pinakamalaki nating sector, services. Okay. It is followed by agriculture. Halos walang impact sa agriculture, but there is also no expansion in the employment in the agriculture. 9 million going down to 8.7 million for agriculture. Industry, 8 million going down to 5.7 million. So we can see that employment, nakikita na natin yung effect ng community quarantine. No? Okay, by subsector, ang pinakamalaking impact dito would really be in the wholesale and retail trade, followed by construction, manufacturing, transportation. So, mga karamihan po nito ang services. Although manufacturing is also going down, but pinakamalaki o the wholesale and retail trade. Alam niyo po, baka naman mas nagkamali din si PSA dito kasi even in the COVID or pandemic, mayroon naman tayo yata siguro yung mga informal logistics, yung mga Grab, yung mga ganun. Kasi hindi siguro na-capture pa ng PSA yun. Mm-hmm. Do you notice, di ba? Marami naman kasi we have to eat, we have to consume. Yeah. And so but then we are not allowed by the government to go to the market or to limit our movement. So ang ano niyan, mayroong nag-grow yung let's call it informal muna kasi hindi pa naman siguro sila na-capture na statistics ng PSA. But anyway, wholesale and retail trade have the largest impact of decline in employment. Yeah. Let me continue. That's second quarter. Okay. Work, even though, sabi naman, hindi naman sila they did not lose their jobs, but they did not have a job. Okay? Something like this. In April 2019, I think this is just this could be just in thousands. 447,000 said that they have a job but did not have a job. Meaning, baka siguro temporarily nag-close. Pero ngayon, parang 12,970,000 April 2020. So, hindi ka nga na-retrench, pero wala ka naman trabaho. Okay? And ito, the perfect storm, our OFWs. We already were afraid of that they may come back here and there's no job. Yeah, they lost their jobs. About 182,000 of them lost their jobs because of the pandemic somewhere, wherever they were. No? Mm-hmm. And 50,000 were repatriated there, so they're looking for work also. But then the sad part there is those workers, OFW, so ang impact niyan sa mga families nila dito po, malaki po yun. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Walang pinipili yung yung ECQ and COVID, even college, and laki din ng increase ng unemployed, 100 ang percent increase number of unemployed by education. Okay, so kita niyo na wala silang trabaho, income would have to go down, and so how is the poverty situation? Before the COVID, 14% of our household population were considered poor, and we define income poor to be having an income that is not enough to meet the basic needs as defined by the NEDA. So 14% of our households were considered poor. That was already a very important gain because sa panahon ng siguro 5 years before, that was in the neighborhood of 22% siguro. Anong effect ng COVID? According to Professor Ducanes, who measured this, the effect of COVID is increasing that poverty to 21%. So na-wipe out ang gains natin of the growth we had during the Aquino and the Duterte governments by just less than a year.
Yeah.
Okay? 21%. So 1/5 to ba? So parang kumbaga, I think if I'm not mistaken, around 20 million individuals are considered poor now. Okay?
Wow.
So,
Okay.
ganon kalala yun.
Okay. Professor.
So, ngayon, okay, the government gave the poor some money, okay? Yung under the Bayanihan, a 2-month cash grant. Professor Canes of Ateneo measured that it decreased a little bit to 18% from 21% kung walang cash grant to 18%. So nakatulong naman. Pero that's 18%, 4% higher than before. Okay. Yun lang po. I'll end there.
Now, let me ask you, Professor, paano po yun? Ang ekonomiya natin ay nakasalalay sa consumer spending. At the same time, sa foreign remittances at doon sa kinikita ng BPOs. Kung walang...
Hindi ko marinig.
Yeah. Okay. Question is, the economy is founded on consumer spending and foreign remittances as well as receipts from BPOs. If you have a worldwide economic meltdown and there is nothing to, talk about, computers and cell phones, yung BPOs. According to the Department of Foreign Affairs, in their latest figures, 124,717 OFWs have been repatriated as of last week. Now, if this number of OFWs back home, anong gagastusin? Anong dadalhin pera sa mga mall? Anong ibibili o pambayad sa bahay, pangpaaral ng mga anak? Professor.
Okay. Magandang tanong. Wala akong magandang answer po niyan kung wala akong pera. Dapat kung may pera ang gobyerno, they can start projects and start employing these people. Or kung kailangan... Ang problema kasi this is not just an ordinary recession. Kasi because we have to also look at the impact of them giving some work in an environment that has the potential of increasing the infection rate. Alam niyo po, yun ang dalawang nag-uumpugang bato. Patrabahuin mo sila sa construction, siyempre, malapit, ang distancing niyan, hindi siguro maobserbahan, no? Pupunta ka sa manufacturing, ang mga factories the work environment is also not conducive for social distancing. So, if we are going to, even if we have the money, we are risking, therefore, an increase of infection rate. So, that's the very difficult part of this particular crisis right now. Madali lang yung Asian financial crisis or yung global economic crisis of 2008. This time, we have this health crisis that goes with it, and we cannot revive the economy, even if we had the money as we could, because that has an impact on infection rate. Ano yung long-term solution? Kailangan natin si health pupasok ulit. Ang health experts to really come up with the vaccines, the testing, all these kind. Dapat kasi mag-invest siguro yung government, hindi lang to revive the economy, but to really make it easy to dampen the increase in the spike in infection rate kung mag-open ng economy. Kulang tayo eh. Mayroong isang data presented by former Secretary Ernie Pernia that among the ASEANs, we are among the lowest spenders for health. Okay? COVID-related lang. So, I mean, kung ganon tayo kaingat para maging mamanage natin yung economy, in the long run, hindi rin natin, it will backfire. Because if we cannot contain the health crisis as fast as we could, and I think you know naman, our infection rate keeps on rising. It has never gone down. Okay? And I mean, if we are not going bold enough in spending for testing, in creating new facilities so that we can cope with the rising active COVID cases, then we cannot open the economy as much. Babalik tayo sa mga stricter quarantine na naman, yung ganun. So, itong mga klaseng pag-manage ng economy will have a very bad impact on economic. Yun na po. Hello?
Ating kasama si Warren De Guzman ng ABS-CBN. Warren, go ahead.
Hello, good morning, Mr. Claret. I just have a question. Were you able to look at the PIDS study published just last week, estimating the impact of COVID-19 on poverty?
Ano po? Hindi ko nabasa po yun.
Okay, this is by PIDS, and they estimate that without the spending programs, yung mga ayuda, yung mga ganon, 5.5 million ang increase sa number of poor Filipinos. And with the social amelioration program and wage subsidies in place, that would reduce the impact to just 1.5 million increase in poverty.
Masyadong optimistic yata yan.
Sige po, please comment.
Yeah, I think yung sinay ko po yung statistics on that one kay Professor Docanes Ateneo. Ang kanya is about, if I will translate it, about 10 million more kung walang ayuda sa gobyerno. Hindi lang 5 million. Yeah.
Regarding sa spending ng government, you're right, because the finance group, the DOF, they say categorically na kailangan mag-conserve ng resources kasi they don't know how long the pandemic will last. So they need to be prudent in borrowing, even though that they can borrow, and record low nga yung mga interest rates na nakukuha natin from international sources. So ano po yung, well, you already mentioned that we should be more bolder. But
yes.
They're spending like 180 billion. The budget for next year is 4.5 trillion. There's build. They have some programs there, including a new virology institute to be set up in Pampanga. They're talking about increasing the capacity of our networks in terms of internet, in terms of digital economy. Do you think that that's enough, or what are the concrete suggestions from you regarding the amount of spending that needs to be done?
I don't have a number for additional spending, but former Secretary Pernia did say that we had that 180 billion something is still lowest in the region. And I think the impression I get is that masyado tayong maingat para ma-preserve yung ating good credit rating. Kaya yung management ng pag-borrow is calibrated so that we are managing our credit performance and reputation. Pero I think, in my personal view, this is a situation where we need to spend more. Kung we are just overly cautious like now, eventually in the long run, mahirapan tayo to balance yung sinasabi ko po na one is the infection curve that you have to flatten, the other one is the recession curve. Okay? Kagaya na lang po sa testing at saka sa, well, hindi naman tayo siguro makadevelop ng sariling vaccine pa natin. So, sa testing na lang halimbawa, just to know exactly where we are, kailangan natin ng additional monies for that. Okay? More, and siguro health facilities, sabi ng mga health frontliners po natin na, please, Mr. President, balik po tayo sa stricter quarantine kasi malapit na kaming ma-overwhelm sa mga new cases. What does that mean? I think there should be room for expanding that healthcare capacity. Kagaya ng ginawa ng China, they built a hospital, okay, in order to expand, to absorb more, hire more health workers. And that's the kind of bold spending on the health side. In addition to the fact that, so that we cannot really continue shutting down the economy, which eventually will also hurt us.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I have one more question. This is for Dr. Herbosa. Is he still here?
Yes, of course. He's still here with us. Yes, please.
Dr. Herbosa.
Ted. Hello, Ted.
Unmute. Okay. I'm here. I'm here.
Okay,
Yes.
Dr. Herbosa, earlier you mentioned that um, you believe in the industrial areas, the transmission is happening in shuttles and canteens of companies. Can you explain how you came to that conclusion?
This was a report when we visited Laguna. We visited Laguna and we met with the mayors, and they gave the reports of where the transmission, where the increase in cases were found. So we have big export zones or economic zones, business parks in Laguna and Cavite. And true enough, some of these private companies started testing on their own. So nung nag-test sila, they will find if they have 3,000 employees, siguro mga 80 ang positive, 100. So initially, they were quarantining them and they were doing their testing on their own. So later on, hindi na nila pinapapasok yung positive, and then ang naburden was the mayors. But the mayor's complaint was that dapat mag-coordinate yung industry. When they do this testing, they should coordinate with the local health officials and the local chief executive para mahanda yung facility. Kasi a lot of them turned out positive eh. So napakalaki no, napakalaking poproblemahin mo yun sa isolation facility, papakainin mo yun for 14 days, tapos lahat ng ayuda na sinasabi nga niya na kailangan ibigay. So that's the source of that. The source is the report of the local. Nandoon din naman yung business sector at sabi nga nila, they will now coordinate. Kasi yung mga economic zones, parang may certain level of independence sila from the LGU. So ito nakikita natin na hindi pwede because you're in the same geographic area and the people live in those communities, mag-i-spread talaga. So very important na as we open those economies, mag-collaborate yung business sector at yung industry at yung local chief executive. Otherwise, mag-transmit lang, masasara din sila kasi like cases were locked down na si Governor Remulla, nag-lockdown siya ng mall nung nakita niya hindi sumusunod sa standards. And in Laguna, in some cities in Laguna, nag-lockdown din sila kasi napakarami ng positive. And then nag-case finding sila at nag-investigate sila kung bakit kumakalat. And yun yung nakita nila. Cafeteria and the shuttle service were the two places of transmission.
Okay, I want to bring that back to Mr. Clarete. Sir, considering that NCR and Calabarzon, they contribute like 53% of our GDP, and this is what health professionals are observing in terms of transmission happening in the industrial zones themselves. So what do you think is the outlook for growth in the third quarter moving forward if this is the kind of transmission we're seeing in our economic hubs?
You know, I think double-digit negative. Parang second quarter. We are starting that with an MCQ. Okay, so may tama na tayo. And I don't see any reversal yet of that move of the growth rate of that infection rate. It is still rising and rising. So eventually, our health authorities will have to really persuade the president to continue the quarantine. No, so that one will have a toll on the economic growth.
Professor, what you're saying is we haven't seen the worst yet.
Parang ganon yung tingin ko. Ewan ko lang ha, kung di ba yung projection, nakita ko yung projection ng infection, yung cumulative cases, increase, steady eh. So, hindi kagaya ng ibang countries na bumaliktad na. Okay, the best would be New Zealand, talagang 0 case in 100 days. Oh, okay. So, I mean, there's something that we had not done yet.
And what could this be?
Yun nga, isang ano ko is, baka naman kulang yung ating investment to contain that health.
Okay. Let me go to Dr. Herbosa. You were once Undersecretary of the Department of Health. How was government spending for health during your time, and how would it compare with the spending these days before COVID-19? Unmute muna natin.
Okay. When we came in, when I came in 2010, the government spending of healthcare, health expenditure to GDP was only 1.8%. Very low. The WHO recommends a minimum of 6% of GDP. Ang mga top countries like Japan and US spend anywhere from 15 to 18%. Ang average na nasa 6 to 10% of most of the well-developed countries. By the time I left, after having passed the sin tax law, we have quintupled the government spending on health to 4.8%. So yun yung ano. In fact, we were on a frenzy of build ng infrastructure, di ba? We called it the health infrastructure gap. Eh, nahinto yun nung sumunod sa akin eh. Iba ang mga naisip niya eh. Dengbak siya, ano ba yung mga dialysis machine, at saka mga mobile dental buses, rural health center, ang mga naisip niya na hindi naman natapos. Eh, sayang. Because a lot of the facilities that we built are now the ones being used as COVID centers. Kasi ang tagal din i-build eh. So in fact, yung isang project ko na nauna, yung Bicol Medical Center, in-inaugurate lang namin ni Secretary Duque nitong last year. And that's been like 7 years. So ang tagal ng infrastructure development even in the government for health services. I think our professor is right. We should have invested more in healthcare. And noong time ko rin, and I was undersecretary, yung si Celia Carlos, yung head ng RITM, dahil ang field ko ay disaster medicine. May pinopose siya na part of our influenza pandemic plan for pandemics na mag-increase tayo ng molecular laboratory. So may network. Each region may isang molecular laboratory. Pero at that time, because we were spending very low, we had to address first the maternal mortality. We had to address the top NCDs, yung non-communicable disease, heart attack, stroke, yung mga number 1 killers ng ating country. So ang nangyari, basically hindi siya na-approve sa Execom kahit pinupush ko. Kasi nga gusto ko preparedness eh. We'll never know when the pandemic will hit. Eh ganun na nga. Nung nag-umpisa itong pandemic, kita nyo, pinadala pa natin sa Melbourne yung mga unang sample natin, yung mga Chinese kasi walang makapag-test. And by the time we set up in RITM, putok na sa Green Hills. Tapos nahuli tayo. We responded late compared to Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore, South Korea. They all had prepared their country after SARS. Nag-set up sila nitong mga laboratory na to. Kaya when they responded, even Vietnam, which was hit by SARS, set up these mechanisms. Tayo, the usual typical Filipino, hindi pa natin kailangan yan. Doon muna tayo sa ibang TB muna tayo or vaccination. So yun, tapos nagkagulo-gulo. So I think we are late because happy kasi tayo na, hindi tayo tinamaan ng SARS. Hindi tayo tinamaan ng MERS-CoV. Hindi tayo tinamaan ng influenza. Lahat ng countries around us nag-prepare yan. Thailand, Malaysia, pero tayo, dahil hindi tayo tinatamaan, dahil archipelago tayo, medyo isolated tayo. Medyo kampante yung mga government official natin at syempre, ginagastos nila sa ibang bagay. Ay, sayang. So now, we didn't have that and as a tribute naman to the group here, nakapag-build sila from 1 molecular laboratory. Now we have 100. So, pero huli pa rin eh. Parang, to me, it's still late. Sabi nga, pinagrade nga sa akin ni Professor Winnie Monsod yung government response to this pandemic. Sabi ko, hindi pa tapos yung semester, incomplete. Pinilit niya ako, standing. Sabi ko, 6 out of 10. Passing? Sabi ko, 7. So, in my terms, and everybody knows, hanggang ngayon, tayo ang longest community quarantine. Tayo ang pinaka-highest number. I'm just hoping na tama yung projections ng team ko that we have already peaked in July, August. Ito yun. This is July, August time. Kasi yung prediction ng bioinformatics team ko, ito yung peak time And I do hope nagde-decelerate na kasi tumaas tayo ng 6,000 confirmed cases a day. For the past 3 days, parang below 4,000, below 3,000 ito kahapon. So I do hope, Diyos ko, sana po nagde-decelerate na. And very important yung community, yung LGU, sa barangay ang laban talaga nito. The national government can only do so much. But the barangay, the individual behavior to prevent transmission, the workplace, ito ang kailangan. Otherwise, bubugsak talaga yung economy natin.
Okay. Malupit din, ano? Okay. Merong tanong yung ating kasamang si Celerina Monte. Celerina, asa ka na? Of Daily Manila Shimbun?
Hello, good morning. Hello, yes, good morning.
Dito ka na. Hindi kita makita. Long time no see.
Wala lang video. Okay, can you hear me? Okay, yung question ko, yung kanina, di ba, sabi ni Dr. Herbosa na after 2 weeks pa, we could know kung yung effect ng MECQ. So, do you have any estimate as to yung possibility na na-reduce yung transmission ng COVID during that 2-week period?
Hindi mo na kailangan itanong yan. Talagang bababa yan. With MECQ, bababa yan. Pero bababa pa siya after 2 weeks? Hindi. Bababa yan after. Ang problema mo, i-open mo yan. Kung i-open mo yan, mag-i-increase na naman yan. So we will have what is called, sa amin sa epidemiology, meron kang oscillating. So mag-oscillate tayo, mag-pick na naman tayo kasi nag-open tayo, tapos magsasara na naman tayo. Until we finally finish by December or January, na below 1 na yung reproductive number. By that time, yung economic figures ng poverty, nagdoble na. So very important talaga yung behavior ng tao. I don't know how to communicate this, but ang dami talagang pasaway. Honestly, ang daming pasaway talaga to not follow the government, to oppose this is one time where we should all be one and just follow the public health measure, whatever your political affiliation is, whether you're yellow, red, or whatever, tayo lahat ang magsasuffer, not one sector. So very important that everybody behaves as one, follow the minimum health standards. Dance na tayo. We are in the mode of the dance. We cannot keep using the hammer. Ito yung article ng isang epidemiologist, si Pollo, na the first is the hammer, flatten it to the ECQs, but the next is the dance. Kailangan makipagsayaw with the virus.
Okay.
Yun.
So, I have a follow-up. Since sabi nyo na there's a possibility nga na umakyat na naman yung COVID cases natin, there was this statement by Defense Secretary Lorenzana that we are ready raw for the GCQ, yung Metro Manila. Do you agree with him na Metro Manila is really ready for GCQ again?
Actually, hindi nga ako agree dun sa MECQ eh. Naawa lang ako sa mga kasama kong doktor eh. Tsaka nurse eh. Pagod na sila eh. Pero ako, in my contention is we should play with this virus and go to GCQ and then MGCQ and then release community transmission but continue minimum health standards. Yung behavior ng bawat individual, yung behavior ng communities, ng barangay, sa barangay, yung behavior ng workplace. Yun ang importante, yung behavior ng school pag nag-open ka ng school. Kasi pag hindi, babalik talaga. Wala tayo. Because the health system will be overwhelmed. And what does that mean? When you overwhelm the system, pati yung hindi COVID, namamatay. Yung kailangan i-dialysis, yung na-heart attack, na-stroke, kasi wala silang kama na mapapasukan, wala silang ICU na ma-admitan. So, may mga kaibigan nga ako, yan ang problema ngayon. Paano ma-confine sa ospital? Ini-confine sila sa Bulacan, sa Pampanga, doon nakakakuha ng vacancy kasi lahat ng kama filled up ng COVID cases. So pag hindi natin na-control to, hindi lang COVID ang mamamatay, pati yung ibang sakit. And yun ang ayaw natin.
Okay, may I just add this point, no?
Please. Professor.
Okay, we're talking about the capacity, so may fixed capacity, ano? This is now the time to broaden that capacity.
Correct.
As we dance with the virus, broaden natin yan, we hire more workers, we construct more facilities, dyan ibubuhos yung investment. I think that's the one, hindi tayo pwedeng magtipi-tipi eh. Because eventually,
Professor Clarete, Noong nag-umpisa to in March, sumulat ako kay Secretary Duque at kay Secretary Nograles at kay Senator Bongo. Sabi ko sa kanila, pwede ba itayo na natin yung PGH Diliman, 700-bed facility. March po yun, March. Kung sinunod nila yung weird idea ko na yun, nakatayo na yan.
Exactly.
Pinahire na natin ng tao yan.
Yun.
Pinayo nilang mga temporary treatment and monitoring facility. Pag natapos ang COVID, ibabalik nila yan sa mall, sa World Trade Center, sa stadium. Gagawin siya ulit for the function. So babagsak na naman yung infrastructure capacity natin. So we should have built it like China. China built 1,000 beds. Sabi ko nga doon sa letter ko, if there is no contractor that can build it in 2 weeks, let us hire the people from China to build it for us in 2 weeks. Because we had the land, we had the space. There were initial plans. Aprobado na to actually ni DBM Secretary Jokno and Secretary Pernia. Kasi gusto nila magka-PGH sa Diliman area. Imagine, that's going to be a 700 to 1,000 bed facility.
If I remember right, Dr. Ted, sinabi mo nga baka pwedeng magkaroon ng pakikipag-usap sa Chinese Embassy. And the Chinese...
tinanong kita. Kasi
magkaroon ng komunikasyon from the Department of Foreign Affairs or Malacanang, and the Chinese Embassy would act on it. Anyway,
even the Chinese government could have loaned us the money to build it. Kasi nung ako'y undersecretary, pinauutang tayo ng China to build yung Philippine Orthopedic Center. Not a very small loan, pero siyempre at that time galit sila sa China kasi kinakalaban dun sa South China Sea. So, nino yun. Pero I'm sure, now na kaibigan natin ng China, pwede pa rin yan ngayon. We can still build by loaning and then eventually maaayos yan. Pero may isang problema dyan. Kailangan robust yung PhilHealth. Kasi sayang yung i-build mo pag hindi naman maganda ang pagpatakbo ng PhilHealth.
That's another issue we can talk about in the near future. Yes, Angel.
Sir, may follow-up lang ako kasi yun nga nabanggit ulit ni Doc Ted kanina yung tungkol dun sa behavior. Focusing lang, sir, dun sa nabanggit nyo kanina na you were saying dun nga sa, let's say, sa isang bahay na 18 yung nakatira, kung pwede mag-face mask sila and face shield. Kaya lang, sir, di ba, babalik tayo sa issue na wala nga kami pambiling pagkain, bibili ko na face mask, face shield, wala kang bilhin yan. So, actually, sir, naging observation din sa ground is parang yung cloth face mask, kaya lang madalas, di naman nila suot. Kasi yun nga, sinasabi din ang init sa loob ng bahay, mainit din na hindi namin masuot. So, yes, sir, kasi kagaya yun, if we are really at reducing the rate of infection or itong ang behavior ng mga Pilipino, kahit na, sir, may survey before na sinabi na mataas yung percentage ng pagsuot ng face mask ng mga Pilipino, ibig sabihin, sir, hindi, it's not the case?
Yes, you're actually showing a big problem in health promotion. Ang tawag sa health promotion, we know what to do, di ba? But then we tell the people, wash your hands. Wala naman silang sabon at tubig. There's no running water in their house. They have no soap. Nag-iigib pa sila, isang kilometro, lalakarin nila o isang bloke. Yan, kagaya niyan, magsuot ka ng face mask, wala kang face mask. Bibili ka nun, ibibili mo ng pagkain sa pamilya mo yun rather than the face mask. So, yan yung mga disjointed policy. May polisiya ka, pero hindi mo naintindihan na it's unimplementable at the level of the local informal settlers and the very poor. That's the one we need to help. That's where government spending. So for your information, we are buying 20 million surgical masks. At ito po ay ibibigay ng libre doon sa ating mahihirap. Ano yung estimate ng poverty rate? Parang 14%. So 14% ng population ba natin yan? Ano, Professor, kung 14% yan, 100 billion, mga 14 million yan. Pwede na yung 20 million, kasi na siguro tigisan mask nila. So kulang pa rin siya, pero definitely it will go a long way to health prevention.
Short reaction.
Ang hirap mag-teach ng health promotion kung gutom yung sikmura.
Yeah.
It's very hard to tell people to be careful about distancing, wash your hands, if they don't have anything to eat. Kasi if they don't have anything to eat, they won't think right. Hindi sila mag-iisip ng tama. Pag wala kang sugar, the brain will not function.
Yeah. Dr. Clarete, please, your reaction. Paki-unmute lang po.
Ay, nakamute po kayo.
Naka-mute po kayo, paki-unmute lang.
Okay. 20 million na po tayo after the second quarter. So, gano'n na nga ang ano. Pero maganda yon na mag-invest nga po tayo para ma-influence natin yung behavior ng ating mga kasama na hindi makaya nila bumili pa ng mga additional gadgets na yon. At even yung part ng yung bibigyan ng cash transfers para pwedeng ma-link na yung na yun, yung cash transfers with behavioral change para ma-observe po natin yung ma-flatten natin or ma-arrest natin yung spread ng virus.
Yeah.
I agree with Doc, no? Tama yung sinabi niya. In fact, isang criticism ko,
Yes.
nag-distribute tayo doon sa Bayanihan 1 ng SAP, yung SAP Amelioration Fund, Social Amelioration Fund. Yung mga local chief executive na-concentrate sa pag-distribute noon. Na-distract sila, imbis na gumawa sila ng mga ligtas COVID center, i-promote itong health promotion and minimum health standard. Yung pag-distribute noon ang problema at sa iba, kung paano nakawan pa yon.
Okay. All right.
Yung his suggestion, pagka maganda ang public health measures mo, ay bibigyan ko kayo ng social amelioration fund para bigyan mo sila ng carrot for performing the minimum health standards.
Okay. Well said. Bok, pwede ba yon? Pag i-distribute tayo ng face mask sa mga mahihirap sa Caloocan?
Eh, naalala ko kausap kong kapitan dito eh. Kasi nasa SAP din ako nung nagkaroon. Sorry. So, may isang kapitan ako kausap dito. Naawa ako kasi susuot nga niya, mukhang KN93. Pero alam mo na pang 5 beses na yung suot. Yung, alam mo yun, yung tas-tas na. Tas-tas na yung mask niya. Yung, alam mong nire-recycle na niya kahit alam niyang hindi pwede. Kasi okay, di ba? KN95, mahal ng konti. Ito pang forma. Pero yun eh. I mean, these masks are disposable. So it's a good reminder for everyone to wear it. But I think there's a big upside to putting incentives to good health behaviors and even gamifying behaviors. You know, you award points, you reward points for wearing masks instead of penalizing people for not wearing masks. Diba? So if for instance I can see you in my barangay CCTV that you're wearing mask every day, then I can give you a kilo of rice at the end of the week. So I think there's a lot of merit to that approach.
Okay.
Kasi sawang-sawa na yung mga tao, hulihin, ikukulong. I mean, dumaan na tayo sa tukhang lahat-lahat, di ba? Tapos ito na naman yung the same approach. So let's give some dignity naman to our kababayan na bigyan natin silang more carrots rather than a lot of sticks.
Okay. Thank you. May tanong para kay Dr. Clarete. We need to borrow more. The DOF is restricting us from borrowing for fear of sliding down once again in terms of credit rating. Mula kay Raymond Gutierrez ito. The BSP should push banks to lend with full government guarantee with application to start after 1 year. Banks are not lending and in fact have started to price in the risks instead of lowering rates for business borrowers. May we have your thoughts about this, Professor? Professor? Yes, Professor.
I think kung sobrang sa pag-credit risk, bumagsak din tayo. Iyan, pag-iisipan po natin yun, kung kulang yung ating investment to beef up our healthcare capacity, to stimulate the economy, kung di tayo ingat na ingat, eventually the dynamics of that is we will have a future bigger cost to deal with. Okay? So, yun. I think we just have to take the risk.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah. Professor, meron akong isang concern. DOF said we still have the resources to provide for the requirements para sa COVID. The President, time and again, has said wala na tayong pera. Coming from your end, from the academe, do you believe we still have the resources o wala na talaga tayong pera?
Kung kulang naman po talaga yung pera kasi this is really added investments, added spending. We just have to borrow.
Okay.
Utang tayo because it is investment into our future.
All right.
Yun.
Okay, maliwanag. Meron daw mga pagtatangka yung iba't ibang mga manggagamot, Dr. Ted, na gumamit ng iba't ibang approach sa treatment, remdesivir at iba pa. Ano ba nakikita ninyo? Meron pang hydrochloroquine. Dr. Ted?
Okay, sa yung hydroxychloroquine, hininto na ng WHO yung study kasi talagang no effect. In a large trial, they have found that the initial findings of the Chinese na it helped in cases of COVID-19 pneumonia na naka-cytokine storm, hindi naman siya nakakatulong talaga. Pareho lang yung number ng namamatay at nabubuhay. So proven na yun na hydroxychloroquine has no effect. Paminaw yun. Yung dalawang natitira, all others, dalawang natitira yung tocilizumab at saka yung remdesivir. Yung remdesivir para po sa moderate and severe. Very expensive. And it is what binigyan ng emergency trial. So ang category niya is under experimental. So if you are going to use it, you either have to be part of the study in the select hospitals undergoing trial, or you have to ask permission. Kung tinatawag namin sa DOH, sa FDA na compassionate use. So using an experimental drug for someone who is very serious. Okay. Yung dalawa pa, yung tocilizumab at saka yung Avigan, the one from Japan. Yun, experimental pa rin yun. They're all part of what is called the WHO Solidarity Trial. Several hospitals, PGH is one of those implementing it. Kaya meron siya. Now, nakita ko, the government is now ordering more kasi naubos na yata. And the supplier, yung Gilead, parang hindi niya masupply yung world demand. So, merong parallel importation. Yeah. So, yun yata yung kinukuhang source natin ngayon through our parallel importation, wherein we can also get hold of remdesivir for our people that will need it. Sa treatment, ang very beneficial na nagbago, nung una takot na takot tayo sa ay na-intubate at kinabit sa ventilator. So may machine, about 300,000 yung machine. Tapos yung cannula parang mga 7,000. Yun yung kinakabit sa mouth and nose mo. Parang yung mga may snoring na problem. Parang ganon. It's called high flow nasal cannula. Mag-i-improve talaga yung oxygen sa dugo mo. Tapos pinoprone, nakadapa sa ICU yung ating mga patient. And hindi na sila nakakabit sa ventilator. Maraming nagsusurvive. Yung remdesivir naman, pinaiigsi yung stay nila sa ospital. Tapos ngayon, ang considered recovered ka na pag kinlear ka na ng doktor. Hindi na kailangan nung 2 negative PCR 4 to 5 days apart. Dati may ganun eh. Kaya ang tagal nila sa hospital bed. So ngayon, pwede na siyang i-clear pag 3 days wala na silang symptoms. I-clear na sila, they can recover at home. Meron pa rin parang 14-day isolation sa bahay para hindi pa rin makahawa kasi baka makahawa pa siya yung nagko-convalescent. So yun yung mga pagbabago. Ang bilis po ng mga pagbabago. Tapos nakipag-usap na rin yung mga kumpanya sa amin, yung sa US, yung sa UK, at yung sa China. All three are talking with the government, asking us if we will order from them the vaccines, which are expected to be out by September, October. Yung mga nangunguna, pati Russia pa pala. Russia, kinausap na rin ng government natin. Kasi malaking economics yan eh. When a country buys, milyon ang bibili nilang bakuna eh.
Okay.
So it's only a matter of how the vaccine company can produce it and when they can deliver it.
Wala pa yung Russia.
Kasama yung Russia. Nakipag-usap na rin yung Russia at ino-offer nila. Pero sa lahat nun, actually, ang kukunin ko yung US at saka yung UK.
Okay.
Medyo takot pa ako sa China at Russia kasi wala naman silang track record ng vaccine production eh. Ang may quality control sa vaccine production, siyempre kukunin mo doon sa mga kumpanyang dati nang gumagawa. Para baka mading vaccine na naman tayo pagkasakali.
Okay. May pahabol dito, parting message. Can we still use rapid test to confirm na cleared na ang patient from COVID? Doc?
Hindi siya designed, the rapid test is designed to check the antibody level. So ang recovery mo is clinical ngayon or a PCR. Kung talagang hindi ka naniniwala doon sa doktor, magpa-PCR ka, magbayad ka. Hindi ka na included doon sa libre. Ikaw ay pwedeng magpa-PCR at magbayad and then you get the negative result. Alam mo na wala ng virus sa katawan.
Thank you. Thank you, Doc. Para kay Boc, Attorney Labastilla, message mo bago tayo magtungo kay Professor Clarete.
Yeah, so I think we're long way, mahaba-haba pa tong laban natin, Kuya Melo. The vaccines are, are not coming very, very soon. So I think if we have to beat this, we really need to change our attitude. No, yung sabi ni Doc Ted, our culture has to change. And I think this is a good time to have a self-assessment for everyone. No, ano ba talaga yung gusto nating mangyari dito? Magpapatigasan ba tayo ng ulo, or do we really want to come together as a nation so we could beat this COVID?
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Professor Clarete, anong message ninyo? Sabi nung panahon daw ni Marcos, if we can save during the time, then we must have been misers. But under Duterte, if we can still save, then we must be wizards. Ano po ba tingin ninyo ron? How do we survive economically?
By spending for our future more. Okay, I think we need to spend more. Number two, we should innovate on how we spend more so that we can influence the behavior. We can relax our constraint in capacity of the healthcare system. And thirdly, we have our own scientists. Let's see how much resources we can invest in their capability to have homegrown technologies to help us out. Thank you.
Okay. Mga kaibigan, ang sabi nila, maraming hamon, maraming suliranin. Pero ang suliranin ay hindi suliranin kung walang kasagutan. I'd like to believe the Filipino can survive all these trials that we have today. Ang sabi nung matatanda, tinagalan nga ika yung bayoneta ng Hapon na may kalawang. Tinagalan nga ika yung batas militar ni Marcos. Ito pa kayang COVID-19. But we have to realize that this is a community effort. See how times changed. Nung kami ni Dr. Ted Herbosa, bata pa, pag kami nilalagnat, yung nanay namin ang nababalisa. Pero sa panahon ni Angel Mobido, pag siya nilagnat, buong barangay yung ninenervyos. So, ganun ang pagkakaiba. Siguro, sa mga susunod na edisyon, we can talk about PhilHealth. How our healthcare is different from that of other Asian countries. I'd like to thank our friends who watched on Facebook Live, who joined us on Zoom. We will be posting this. I know your email. I will share the presentation of the good professor. And then maybe sa mga susunod pang pagkakataon, we can talk a lot more how the government and how the people should work together to bring a solution to all this. Thank you. God bless us all. Stay safe.